Hey everyone, hope you're all in a good mood today because I've got a new story for you. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe, it really means a lot to me. 14 people were in my apartment on Christmas Day. 13 of them heard my fiancé tell me that serving his family was the closest I'd ever get to being valuable. And not one person at that table said anything. And about 4 seconds later, his Aunt Della asked if there was more gravy. I got her the gravy. I want you guys to know I got her the gravy. I smiled while I did it. And then I went back in the kitchen and stood there with my hands in the sink water and did math. Okay, backing up a sec. Because otherwise this makes no sense and half of you are going to ask why I was cooking for 14 people in the first place. I'm 29, Ashton is 32, we've been together long enough that his nieces call me auntie, and short enough that we're still not married. We live on the northeast side of Cedar Rapids in the top unit of a fourplex that was built when Eisenhower was alive. Radiator heat you can't control, 1 bathroom, a stove where the back left and front right burners work and the other 2 exist as decoration, and a back stairwell so narrow you have to turn a laundry basket sideways to get it up. There are 3 parking spots for 4 units. I signed the lease by myself 2 years ago when my old roommate moved to be near her mom. And Ashton moved in 7 months after that when his buddy Dylan's lease ended and Dylan wanted to live with his girlfriend. My name is the only name on it. That was supposed to be a paperwork thing. I met Ashton through my friend Hannah, whose cousin Kimberly is married to Ashton's older brother Lorenzo. Hannah dragged me to Kimberly's birthday thing at the bowling alley on First Ave, and Ashton spent the whole night getting everybody drinks and remembering what everybody was drinking. And I thought that meant something about him. He's the guy who carries your grandmother's chair for her. He's the guy who tells you your idea is good in front of other people. What I found out later is that all of that is for the room. And when the room empties out, he wants to be paid back for it. And the currency he takes payment in is you doing things for him quietly, while he tells people how lucky he is. Why I stayed, since that's coming, because he was warm when he wanted to be. Because he'd get up at 5 to scrape my windshield in January without being asked. And because every time something bad happened, I could always find one reason it was situational. His mom, Henrietta, is a lot. His job was a lot. His grandma Louise fell in October and the whole family lost their minds. There was always a reason it was this month and not him. His family is a whole ecosystem, and you need the map. Henrietta is the mother and she runs everything through favors. She'll buy you tires, and then she owns you a little. Edgar is his dad, still married to Henrietta, still in the house, and his entire personality is staying out of it, which everyone in that family talks about like it's a virtue. Lorenzo is the oldest, married to Kimberly, and Kimberly has hated hosting since 2019 and says so. Martina is the sister, married to Morris, 2 kids, and she and Henrietta have been at war since the fall. Quincy is the baby, 24, lives at home, contributes nothing, universally adored. Aunt Della comes with Louise and comments on everything. And you need to understand the 2 houses, because everything in this family runs through them and I didn't get it myself for the first year. Grandma Louise has her own house on the southwest side, lived in it since the 60s, and she can't do the stairs anymore since she fell in October, so the whole family has been fighting since Halloween about where she's supposed to go and what happens to that house. Henrietta wants Louise to move in with her and Edgar. Martina thinks her mother wants Louise's house so she can hand it to Quincy, and that's why those 2 stopped speaking. Then separately there's the duplex. Henrietta owns a little duplex on the west side that she's been renting to a woman named Erica for 6 years. And it's all 1 level, no stairs, which matters in about a minute. Ashton has been telling everybody since summer that Erica's lease is up in April and his mother is giving us that duplex. He told me. He told Lorenzo. He told people at a bowling alley. 2 houses, neither of them his, and he talks about both of them like a man with keys in his pocket. Louise hosted Christmas for 40-some years. After the fall, it was up for grabs, and grabbing it meant something, because in that family, whoever hosts is the one who's arrived. Henrietta wanted it back. Martina wanted it, so Henrietta couldn't have it. Ashton took it at Thanksgiving. At Martina's table with everybody there, he announced that we'd host Christmas at our place, that I'd handle the food, that I love cooking for people. I was sitting right next to him holding a plate of green beans. Henrietta clapped. Actually clapped. We fought about it in his mom's driveway for 25 minutes before we even got in the truck. I told him our apartment holds maybe 6 people comfortably and 2 of our burners don't work, and he knows that because he's the one who called Mason, our landlord, about it in August and Mason never came. He told me I was embarrassing him in front of his family by acting like it was some huge imposition. I said it is a huge imposition. Name one thing about this that isn't an imposition. He said his mom was going to bring stuff. Martina was going to bring stuff. Kimberly always brings a dessert. Everybody chips in. That's how his family does it. and that I was making it into a thing because I didn't grow up with a big family, so I didn't understand. That one worked on me, which I hate. My family is 4 people and a folding table. His family is loud and everywhere, and I wanted in. I told myself if I did this once, well, I'd be in. That's the honest reason. I wanted them to think I was worth having. It was 8 people when he announced it. By December 6th, it was 10, because Della and Louise were coming. By the 14th, it was 12 because Morris's brother was going to be in town, and by the 20th, it was 14 and I'd stopped asking who the extras were. Henrietta started texting me guidance. Not questions, guidance, that Louise can't have anything with onion, that Ashton doesn't like when the turkey is dry, that she always did 2 kinds of potatoes because Quincy won't eat sweet potatoes, that she'd bring her serving platters over since I probably don't have any nice ones. That last one she typed out with a smiley face. Nobody offered to bring food. Not one person. Kimberly texted me a heart and told me I was brave, and that she was so glad it wasn't at her house this year. Which, at least she's honest. Martina texted asking if there'd be a kids' table, and then never followed up on the thing about the pie. When I brought this up to Ashton, he told me not to keep score, that his family isn't transactional, that they'd all done Christmas for years and I was the new one, so this was my turn to give something back. I asked him back for what, exactly. He didn't answer that. He put on SportsCenter. My mom Tamara's reaction was the worst kind of useless. She wanted to know if maybe I was being a little sensitive because families are like that, everyone takes a turn, and she'd hosted for Dad's whole family in 1998 with a baby on her hip. My dad James is the opposite problem. He wanted Ashton's phone number, which he already has, and he wanted to call him and ask him man to man what exactly he thought he was doing volunteering my labor. I spent an entire Thursday night on the phone talking my father out of calling my fiancé, and then my mother got mad at Emmy because Dad brought it up again at dinner, and it turned into their thing about him retiring in April and her not wanting him home all day. And my sister Elisa, who hasn't been fully speaking to me since October because I missed 2 weeks of the rotation sitting with our grandma Veda. Elisa said that it was funny how I could find 14 days to plan a dinner for people who aren't even my family. She wasn't wrong, and I'm still mad about it. The 4 days before Christmas were Aldi, then Hy-Vee for what Aldi didn't have, then Sam's Club with Hannah because I needed a pan that would actually fit a 22-pound turkey, and my roasting pan is the size of a shoebox. Sophia downstairs lent me her electric roaster, which is how I cooked the turkey at all, because 2 burners and 1 oven does not do 14 people. Stefan in the back unit was in the middle of his own war with Mason about the water heater, which matters, because Mason had shut it off twice that week, and I did a lot of that cooking with lukewarm water, and there is nothing like scrubbing a roasting pan in cold water at midnight to keep your head clear. I asked Ashton on the 23rd to at least handle drinks and ice and the folding chairs from his mom's. He got the chairs. He forgot ice twice, and we used the bag of frozen peas. Christmas Day they came at noon and they left at 9. 9 hours. Quincy walked in, took the good chair, and played on his phone until it was time to eat, then went back to the chair. Morris and Lorenzo watched the game at a volume that made Stefan bang on his ceiling. Martina and Henrietta had a full argument about Louise's house in my kitchen doorway while I was trying to get the turkey out. And neither of them moved, and I had to say excuse me 3 times holding a roasting pan. Della followed me around the kitchen telling me what her mother used to do with the giblets. Louise told me the mashed potatoes were a little grainy and said it kindly, which somehow was worse. The kids spilled Hawaiian punch on the rug and Martina said she'd get it and then she didn't. Kimberly brought a Sara Lee cheesecake still frozen in the box and put it on the counter and told me it needed about 4 hours. And it was 12:15. Nobody helped. I want to be clear that nobody helped. Not once. Not even the way people fake help. 14 people, 1 bathroom, 9 hours, and I made 2 trips down the back stairs with garbage bags in my socks because I didn't have time to find shoes. And Ashton spent the whole day being the host. That's the part that gets me. He carved in front of everyone. He made a toast about family and about his grandmother and about carrying things forward. He told them, at my table, that he was going to get us into a real house by next Christmas, that his mom's duplex was going to open up in the spring, that this was the last year anybody would have to squeeze in. Everybody nodded like he'd built the place with his hands. He'd been sitting on our couch for 4 days watching the Bears and complaining about his back. Around 7:30, the plates were stacked in 3 towers, and the sink was full and the counter was full, and I asked him, in front of them, yes, on purpose, because I'd asked him privately twice that day if he could please just wash the dishes. That's it. That's all I asked for. He looked at me like I'd asked him to donate a kidney and told me to stop acting like a spoiled girl. And that serving his family was the closest I'd ever get to being valuable. 13 people heard it. Edgar looked at his plate. Lorenzo laughed the way you laugh at a joke you didn't hear. Quincy didn't look up. Kimberly said his name, once, like a suggestion, and then went back to her wine. Henrietta was looking directly at me, and she smiled, and I asked her right there, out loud, if that's how she raised him to talk to somebody in her own family, and she told me the two of us shouldn't do this in front of the children. Martina agreed with her. That's the only thing those two agreed on all year. I said okay. I smiled. I told everybody there was still gravy and pie, and I got Della her gravy. And I stood at that sink for 9 minutes, and then I came back out and refilled drinks. Nobody left early. They stayed another hour and a half. They took their platters, they left the frozen cheesecake, and Henrietta hugged me on her way out and told me I did really well for my first year. The fight after was until 2 a.m., and it was the longest conversation we've ever had. And every single thing that came out of it was worse than what went in. He told me I humiliated him by asking for help in front of his family, that a normal woman would have handled it in the kitchen. I told him he humiliated me first. He said that's not the same, and I said explain how. And he actually tried. He told me his family judges him, that they've been waiting for him to fail his whole life, that Lorenzo has a house, and Martina has kids, and he has an apartment with somebody else's name on the lease, and that I don't understand what it's like to have to prove yourself constantly. I asked him whose fault it is that his name isn't on the lease. He got loud. He brought up my dad. He brought up that my family barely calls him. He told me I'd been cold since Thanksgiving, and that's what everybody noticed today. Not what he said. He said he was sorry I took it that way, which is not the same species of sentence as an apology, and when I pointed that out, he grabbed his keys and went to his mother's for the night in his mother's truck, which is titled to his mother, on his mother's insurance, on his mother's phone plan. He came back the next afternoon like nothing happened, and asked what was for dinner. Here's what I keep coming back to. He stood in my apartment, on my lease, and told a room full of people that he was moving us into his mom's duplex in the spring like it was already his. Our renewal comes up January 15, and I've been with him long enough to know exactly 3 things about his mother, his brother, and his grandmother's house that nobody in that family knows he said, because he said them to me in bed. Anyway, it's late and I have to be up early. My knuckles are still wrecked from the pan. I'm not going to do anything stupid. I'm going to do something very, very calm. I genuinely cannot stand Ashton. His whole "my family judges me" speech exposed his pathetic little scheme. He feels inferior to his siblings, so he turns Op into unpaid staff, and then takes applause for her work. The second she asked him to wash one damn dish, his fake provider costume slipped, and he punished her for making everyone see it. And his family staying silent was deliberate. Henrietta's smile said everything. They didn't care that Op was humiliated because dinner was served, and their precious grown baby still got to feel important. That first-year comment was so smug and gross, like Op had successfully completed servant initiation. Op definitely tolerated too much because she wanted their approval, but him coming back and asking what was for dinner would have cured me instantly. I'd renew that lease alone, throw his crap into garbage bags, and tell Mr. Future Homeowner to collect it in Mommy's truck. He can go be valuable at Henrietta's house. Update. So a bunch of you told me to lawyer up, and I want to say very clearly there's nothing to lawyer about. Nobody stole anything. This is not that kind of story. But shout out to whoever asked what date my lease was up and whether Ashton had ever actually met my landlord. Because that question is the reason this whole thing went the way it went, and I'm going to explain why in a minute. First, though. Oh wait, I forgot to mention something from Christmas that I left out of the last post because I genuinely forgot it happened until Hannah reminded me. When Ashton did his toast about getting us into a real house by next Christmas, Henrietta made a face. Not a big one. Hannah wasn't there, obviously, but Kimberly told Hannah about it at Kimberly's niece's birthday party on the 28th at that trampoline place off Edgewood, and Hannah called me on her drive home because she thought it was funny. Henrietta made a face like the duplex was news to her. And when I sat with that for 2 days, I realized I had never once heard Henrietta say the word duplex. Ashton said it. Ashton always said it. His mom's duplex. The one on the west side that Erika's been in for 6 years, it's opening up in the spring. We're getting it. We're basically getting it. He'd been saying it since summer. Anyway, so like 3 days after Christmas, we're still barely talking. Not silent, we talked constantly. That's the exhausting part. We talked about it every night for a week, and it never got anywhere. He'd start out reasonable, and then it'd curve into me being cold since Thanksgiving. He kept coming back to that. That I'd been different. That his family noticed. That Martina asked him if we were okay. I told him yes, I was different. I was different because I was cooking for 14 people who don't respect me. He told me respect is earned and that his family had been perfectly nice to me. And I said, name one nice thing. Name one. And he said his mom brought platters. His mom brought platters. She brought empty dishes to my house for me to fill up with food I bought and cooked, and took them home dirty, and in his head that's a gift. He apologized on the 29th. Sort of. He said the valuable thing came out wrong. That he meant it as a joke about how good the food was. That everybody was laughing. Nobody was laughing. Lorenzo laughed. One man laughed. And when I said that, he pivoted to how I'd made everyone uncomfortable by bringing it up in front of the kids. Which is his mother's line, verbatim. He'd been at her house all night. That's when I stopped arguing with him about Christmas at all. Not because I forgave it. Because I understood I was arguing with a room, and not a person. Okay, so here's where it actually turns. I've been paying $1,040 a month for that apartment for 2 years. Ashton has been giving me $400 a month since he moved in cash, sometimes on the 5th, sometimes on the 12th. Twice not at all, and we never talked about it again. He also didn't pay the internet, that was mine. And the electric was in my name, and the renter's insurance was mine. He paid for groceries sometimes and made it a whole event when he did. And every time I brought up putting him on the lease or splitting things properly, he had a reason. Mostly that his credit was bad from a car thing years ago, and adding him would raise the rent or Mason would want a bigger deposit. I let it go every time, because he was right that Mason is a nightmare, and honestly I liked having my name on my own place. I didn't understand until December that not being on the lease was the whole point for him. He got to live somewhere for $400 with zero paperwork attached to his life, and tell his family he was about to move into something better. Mason texts everybody in the building the same group message about renewals in early January. Sophia downstairs got hers, Stefan got his, I got mine on the 3rd. 60 days notice if you're not renewing. Rent going to $195. And I sat on my bed and read it, and I did not feel dramatic. I felt like somebody handed me a tool. Because here's what I know that his family doesn't. Ashton has told me, in bed, in the car, drunk on the 4th of July, a bunch of things over the years, and 3 of them matter. 1. He didn't tell his mother about the duplex plan because his mother never agreed to it. He asked her in July. She said she'd think about it and never brought it up again, which in Henrietta language means no. And he decided to treat it as a maybe and started telling people, including me, including a whole table on Christmas. 2. Louise's house. Henrietta asked Ashton back in the spring to help her talk Louise into moving in with her and Edgar so the house could be rented out, and he told me about it in the car like it was gossip. Then Martina went to war with their mother in October over a version of it that isn't true. And he's watched that happen for 4 months and said nothing to either of them, because as long as those two aren't speaking, he's the one both of them call. 3. What he says about them. Not to them. He calls Lorenzo a company man who peaked at 26. He said Martina married Morris because nobody else was going to ask. He told me Quincy is a rat, and their mother made him that way. He's called Kimberly boring so many times it's basically her name in our house. And he's said more than once that when Louise dies there's going to be a bloodbath and he plans to be the calmest person in the room so he can come out ahead. He said that to me on the couch eating leftovers, and he thought it made him sound smart. That's what I have. Not documents. Not screenshots. Just years of him telling me who he really is because he thought I was a safe place to put it. So on Sunday the 4th, I told Mason I'd renew. Just me. Same as always. My name, my signature, nothing new. And I didn't tell Ashton. And I want to be honest that I didn't tell him because I wanted to watch what he did with the information he thought he had. What he did was go bigger. That's the thing about him. When you go quiet, he doesn't get suspicious. He fills the space. New Year's Eve was at Lorenzo and Kimberly's, and Ashton spent it telling everyone that the duplex was happening. That he'd talked to his mom. That Erica was out in April. That we'd have a yard. That we'd host next year properly. He said it in front of Henrietta. She was in the same room, holding a plate of little smokies. And she said nothing, and she looked at me. Not at him. And I looked right back at her, and I raised my eyebrows, and I let her sit in it. She knew that I knew. That was the first time she'd ever looked at me like I was a person in the room. And then Martina cornered me by the coats about 11 o'clock, which is a whole thing I need to explain. Martina has been trying to get me on her side about Louise's house since October because she thinks Henrietta is going to hand it to Quincy. And she's been mad at me for not caring. And that night she'd had enough wine to just come out and say that my problem is I let Ashton talk to me like the help, and she'd never let Morris do that. Which, from a woman who watched her brother say it and then asked if I was going to bring out the pie, I told her that. I said she was sitting 4 feet from me and asked about pie. And she got loud and said she wasn't going to fight her mother on my behalf when I wouldn't even return a text about Grandma, And Kimberly came in to see what the noise was, and Martina told Kimberly to stay out of it, and Kimberly said this is her house, so no. That fight is still going. They haven't spoken since. I did not start it, and I'm not going to pretend I'm sorry it happened. I also finally had it out with my sister. Elisa came over on the 9th to drop off Mom's roaster pan and stayed 3 hours, and we screamed at each other in my kitchen. She said what she's actually been mad about, which isn't the 2 weeks I missed with Grandma Veda. It's that when Grandma had her surgery in August, Elisa took unpaid time and I sent DoorDash. That's what it was the whole time. And she said something that took the wind out of me. That she's watched me hand my whole life to a man who doesn't even put his name on a piece of paper next to mine. And she can't stand it. And she especially can't stand that I make it look like a choice. I told her to get out. She got out. She texted me 40 minutes later from her car in the Casey's lot asking if I wanted her to come back in. I said yes. We sat on my floor and ate the frozen cheesecake, which had finally thawed, in January, because Kimberly left it and nobody ever came back for it. Also, Sophia downstairs got her hours cut and asked if I knew anyone hiring. And Stefan's water heater war ended with him withholding rent, which meant Mason came to the building for the first time in a year. And I need you to remember Mason exists because he becomes relevant. Ashton found out about the lease on January 12th, and not from me. Mason knocked on our door about Stefan's situation, saw Ashton, and said something offhand about how I'd already gotten mine signed. And he wished everybody was that easy. Ashton waited until Mason went down the stairs, and then he asked me what I signed. And I told him. 1 year, my name, $195 starting February 1. He didn't yell right away. He asked why I didn't tell him, and I said because you've been telling an entire family we're moving into a duplex your mother never agreed to give you. And that's when it got ugly in a way it's never been. He said I don't know anything about that conversation. I said you told me in July she said she'd think about it and you know what that means. He said I was twisting it. I said then call her. Call her right now, put her on speaker, ask her if Erica's leaving in April and if we're getting that duplex, and I'll apologize to you in front of her. He didn't call her. He stood in our kitchen for maybe 20 seconds doing that thing where he looks around the room like the answer's on the counter, and then he told me that I'd made him look stupid at his brother's house on New Year's. That Henrietta had said something to him in the car, and that this was all because I couldn't take a joke about gravy on Christmas. Gravy. He called it a joke about gravy. I told him what he actually said, word for word, and then I told him I'd been thinking about the word valuable for 3 weeks. That I make $1,095 in rent valuable every month by signing my name to it. That his mother's truck is valuable, and his mother's phone plan is valuable, and being the son who stays in the middle of everybody's fight is valuable, and none of those things are his. And he told me, and this is the part I keep replaying, he told me that everything he's building for both of us, and I'm too small-minded to see it. And one day I'd be grateful. Then he said if I'd already signed, then he wanted to be on the lease. Now, suddenly his credit was fine. Suddenly Mason wouldn't care. I said no. He asked me if I was leaving him. I said no. That's the truth. I wasn't leaving him yet, and this is where some of you are going to be mad at me. Because what I wanted was not to leave. What I wanted was for him to still be standing in that apartment on the day his mother found out what he's been saying about her house, about her plan for Louise, about which of her children she made into a rat. I wanted him inside the building when it came down. He slept at Lorenzo's that night. He came back the 13th with flowers from the Hy-Vee and a whole speech about how his family is complicated and he's the one holding it together, and I let him back in and I made dinner and I asked him questions about April. Grandma Louise's 84th birthday is January 31st. Henrietta booked the party room at the place on Blair's Ferry, and every single one of them is going to be there. And Ashton has been telling people he's got an announcement. So do I. Oh, Ashton is a professional fraud with flowers from Hy-Vee. The second op said call her and he started scanning the kitchen for an escape route. I was done. He knows the duplex is imaginary. He's been spending Henrietta's property, Erika's home, and op's future like they belong to him. Then suddenly he wants on the lease because his $400 luxury vacation is about to end. Absolutely the hell not. The nastiest part is him keeping Henrietta and Martina at war, because being their middleman makes him feel powerful. He doesn't hold that family together. He quietly poisons everyone, collects their secrets, and calls himself valuable. I love that op renewed alone, but letting him back in and cooking dinner so she can stage a birthday party explosion is dangerously messy. I understand the rage, and honestly I want to see his lying ass exposed. But op needs Elisa there. His bag's already outside, and the locks changed first. Burn his fake kingdom down verbally, sure, just don't be trapped in the apartment with the little prince afterward. Last update. To whoever commented that I was going to fold and take the high road, I hope you're reading this. I hope you're sitting down. So the announcement Ashton had been teasing for 2 weeks was that Grandma Louise should have the duplex. That was it. Not him and me moving in like he'd been promising the entire family since summer. Grandma and I knew exactly why he switched it. Because I watched him figure it out at our kitchen table in January, when Erica still hadn't given his mother any notice and April was getting close. He'd run out of road. Either he stands up at that party and admits his mother never actually said yes and he'd been running his mouth for 8 months, or he gets in front of it and gives the duplex away as his idea, to a woman with a bad hip, in front of 30 people. So that instead of being the liar, he's the guy who solved the thing this family has been screaming about since Halloween. 1 level, no stairs, Grandma's safe, everybody stops fighting. And Ashton did that. He practiced it at me in our kitchen on the 28th eating cereal, standing up, and asked me if it sounded like he'd thought of it himself. That was his actual question to me. I said it sounded great. It wasn't his to give, and we both knew it. The party room on Blair's Ferry, Saturday the 31st, about 30 people, foil pans of pasta, sheet cake with Louise's name spelled with 1 L too many. Louise in the good chair by the window. Martina and Kimberly, still not speaking since New Year's, set up on opposite ends like a middle school dance. Quincy on his phone. Edgar standing by the coffee doing his one trick, which is existing near a beverage while his family burns. I sat with Louise before it started and asked her, just her, if she even wanted to leave her house. She said no. She said everybody's been having a big conversation about her like she's a piece of furniture, and not one of them asked her. She held my hand when she said thank you for asking, honey. And I'm not going to make that into a whole thing, but I sat there afterward feeling like I'd been handed something. He did it around 4:30, after the cake, standing up with a plastic cup. Same speech as Christmas about family and carrying things forward. He only has the one speech. I want you all to know that. And then he said come April Grandma should have the duplex. He'd talked it through with his mom. They were on the same page. He'd handle everything. And Henrietta said, from the food table, that she'd said no such thing. He laughed. He did the wires got crossed thing. The must have misunderstood in July thing. And it was working. It was 90 seconds from being nothing. And that's when I got up. I said he didn't misunderstand. I said he told me in the car that same night that she meant no, and he was going to say yes anyway. And I said it looking at Henrietta, not at him. And then Martina asked from across the room if that's why he'd been so weird about Grandma's house since October. And I said no, and I told her the actual thing. That Henrietta's plan all along was to move Louise in with her and Edgar and rent Louise's house out. That Henrietta asked Ashton to help talk Louise into it back in the spring. That it was never about Quincy, and never had been. And that he's known the whole time Martina was at war with her mother, over a thing that wasn't happening. He let it run, because as long as those two aren't speaking, he's the one both of them call. Martina came out of that chair so fast the chair went over. Not at me, at him. She got maybe 8 inches from his face and asked him if it was true, and he never once answered. He kept doing it's not that simple. It's more complicated than that. You don't have the full picture. And she started hitting him in the chest with the flat of her hand. Not hard, over and over. Screaming that she hadn't spoken to her own mother since Halloween. Morris grabbed her arm and she turned around and screamed at Morris. Told him to get off her. Told him he'd sat there and let her go through it for 4 months. Because he doesn't like conflict either, and that's the whole problem with him. Morris walked out, coat still on the chair, walked out to the parking lot. Then it went everywhere at once. Lorenzo tried to do the reasonable oldest brother thing. Hands up, everybody calm down, it's Grandma's birthday. And Kimberly, who hadn't said a word to Martina in a month, crossed the entire room and told her husband to sit down and shut up. That he's been managing this family since he was 19, and he's never once fixed anything. He just lowers the volume so he doesn't have to deal with it. Lorenzo told her not to embarrass him in front of everyone. Kimberly said something back about his mother's kitchen in 2019 that I did not understand and clearly landed like a truck because he sat down. Henrietta was saying my name. Loudly, over and over my name. Like if she said it enough, I'd stop. And she asked me why I would do this here, on her mother's birthday, in front of everyone. So I told her. I said I've known all of it since before Christmas. I said I cooked for 14 people in a 1-bedroom apartment with 2 working burners, and I carried garbage down the back stairs in my socks, and I waited. On purpose. Because I could have said all this in my kitchen with nobody watching, and it would have cost him nothing. And I picked this room. This day. With all of you in it. Because I wanted it to hurt. I said I wanted her to hear it standing up. And she told me I'd gone too far and that I was a guest in this family. And I said her son stood in my apartment. That I pay for. And told 13 people that serving them was the closest I'd ever get to being valuable. and she smiled at him when he said it. I said she smiled. I described the smile, and she said I was making that up. And Della, who followed me around my own kitchen telling me about giblets. Della said, out loud, that she'd heard him say it, and that she'd thought at the time it was ugly. Then she immediately told me I should still be ashamed of myself for today. Both, within 4 seconds. That woman contains multitudes. Ashton's move was to call me a liar, loudly, in front of everyone, and then to start telling the room what I'm like. That I'd been cold since Thanksgiving. That I don't talk to my own sister. That my family barely calls him. That I'd been waiting to do this and that this is who I actually am and they're all seeing it now. And I said, fine. Let's do who we actually are. And I told them what he says about them when the doors closed. Lorenzo, a company man who peaked at 26. Martina, married Morris because nobody else was going to ask. Kimberly, boring. So many times it's basically her legal name in our apartment. Quincy, a rat, and their mother made him that way. And Quincy, 24, lives at home, has said maybe 40 words to me in 3 years. Looked up from his phone and told the room that's a really specific thing for somebody to make up. Best sentence anyone in that family produced all year. Ashton lost it then. Screaming. Actual screaming. In a rented party room with a woman turning 84 sitting 9 feet away. That I ruined his life. That I'm nothing. That I've never had anything going on. That the only reason he stayed was because leaving would have been more work. He said I was a bitter, dried-up nobody with a rented apartment and a family that doesn't like her either. He said the thing about 2023, which I have never told any of you and which I will not be typing out. And Kimberly said his name like she'd been slapped. And Louise, in her chair, in her shawl, told her grandson to get out. Those words. Get out. He didn't. He stood there and told his own grandmother she doesn't know what's been going on. And I said the last thing, which I'd been saving since January 4th. That the apartment is mine. My name, my signature. Renewed by me alone at $1 to $95 starting February 1st. And that he had until the end of the month. And that I gave him the month on purpose, because I wanted him to spend February watching this family decide what he's worth. Henrietta left with Louise and Della. She took her mother out through the side door. Nobody hugged me. Nobody said I did the right thing. I drove home by myself and the parking lot was full of people having 6 different fights in 6 different cars. Now the actual fallout, because this is the part I've been waiting to type. He came back that night and we went until almost 4 in the morning. And it was the worst conversation of my life and it did not stop. He tried everything in order. Counseling. That we could work on it. That I ambushed him. That his mother is the real problem and always has been and I just handed her a win. That he was going to tell everyone about the duplex eventually. He cried twice. He got on the floor at one point, which I did not enjoy the way I thought I would. Then it turned again, and he told me I'd be alone at 35, and that his family would forgive him eventually and never forgive me. Which, correct. Honestly, 4 weeks of that. 4 weeks of him living in my apartment arguing with me every single night, telling me he'd get a second job, that he'd put his name on the lease, that he'd get my ring reset. He wrote me 2 pages about his childhood and left it on the counter under the sugar bowl. And then on the 26th, he told me I owed him $400 a month for a year and a half, and he wanted it back, and I went through my phone out loud. The months he skipped. The electric, the internet, the renter's insurance, the $600 of Christmas groceries. And he stopped talking about money forever. February 28th was a Saturday. He was supposed to be out by that night, and at 4 in the afternoon he was on the couch playing PlayStation. So I got the box of hefty bags from under the sink, and I started with the closet. His hoodies, his Xbox stuff, his protein tub, his stupid Carhartt that never fit him, the shoes, all of it. And I carried it down the back stairs and left it on the landing in bags. And he was following me the whole time yelling that I was insane, and that I was a psycho, and that he was going to call Mason. I told him to call Mason. Mason knows my name now. Mason replaced Stefan's water heater in March because of me. Stefan came out on the 2nd floor and told us to take it outside, and Ashton told Stefan to mind his business, and Stefan told him he doesn't live here. That got him. That's the one that got him. Out of everything anybody said to him that entire month, a neighbor telling him he doesn't live here. He tried to grab the bag with the PlayStation out of my hands on the stairs, and I let go of the top and let the whole thing go down 4 steps. And the console cracked the corner of the case, and he went after me for that, screaming. And I stood in the doorway of my own apartment and screamed back at him until Sophia came out on the 1st floor with her phone in her hand. He got in the Sonata, The $1,400 2009 Sonata he had to borrow half the money for from Dylan. Because Henrietta came and took her truck back on February 3rd with a spare key he didn't know existed. While he was inside arguing with me, he came out, and it was just gone. And he sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes before he drove off. Second week of February, he was calling me 12 times a day from a number I didn't know. Because Henrietta took him off her phone plan on the 6th. Truck gone, phone gone, apartment going, all inside 4 weeks. He slept on Lorenzo's basement couch 11 days until Kimberly said absolutely not, and now Lorenzo and Kimberly are in it about that too. Martina told him at their mother's house that she wants 4 months of her life back, and hasn't spoken to him since. Henrietta will not let him move home. And it's not because of me. It's because if he's in that house, then all of this is at her kitchen table every morning. Her position is that everybody needs to calm down and act like a family, which means she wants somebody else to take him, and nobody will. He's in a rented room off Dylan's cousin on the southwest side. Erika renewed the duplex, by the way. She was never leaving. She never even talked to Henrietta about leaving. The whole thing he'd been telling people for 8 months, the thing he stood up and gave away in front of 30 people, was never happening at all. Louise is still in her house. Martina redid her whole week to be their mornings. She and Henrietta are still not right, but they're talking, which is more than December. Me, Elisa's over most Sundays. My dad called Ashton once in February, and neither of them will tell me what was said. My mom's take is that I could have handled it more privately, which she said while eating my food in my apartment. Sophia brought me a plant. I answered him in March because I wanted to hear it. He told me I ruined his family. Not that he missed me, that I ruined his family. I told him he'd been telling them who he was for years, and I just said it at a volume they could hear. And he hung up. He was right that serving his family would be the most valuable thing I ever did for him. I just picked the day. I'm fully on Op's side. Was exposing him at Grandma's birthday messy as hell? Absolutely, but Ashton only cared about looking good, so embarrassing him in private would have done nothing. He needed everyone watching when his fake little hero act fell apart. This man had 4 weeks to leave and was still on her couch playing PlayStation like she'd forget. Sir, grab your ugly Carhartt and go. The private 2023 comment also proved he never loved Op the way he claimed. He kept her pain saved for the moment he needed to hurt her most. Gross. His family can stay mad too. They ignored his behavior until it started affecting them personally. Suddenly, everybody found a voice when their own names came up. Op didn't ruin that family. She just stopped protecting a loser who talks big while living off every woman around him. And Ashton saying Op would end up alone was hilarious. Babe, you lost the apartment, truck, phone plan, and every available couch in 1 month. Worry about yourself. Oh, anyway, that's the story. Love you guys. See you in the next one.